All right, welcome to the Osceola's First Impressions. Big night for FSU as they beat Louisville 16-6 to win the ACC championship. And guys, the defense carried the day. It wasn't always pretty on offense, but it was a beautiful game on defense for Florida State. They limit Louisville to 188 yards and 6 points to win the ACC championship. Now 13-0. Mark and Fish. I'm here with Jerry Cutts. Mark, start the. What do you think of the game, man? It was something else about the defense.
Well, Brock Lenz 1-0 as a starter.
Yep.
That is not the story. The story was an incredible butt kicking on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, that was as thorough domination I think I've ever seen. I mean, I can't think of another time. I mean, Fish had brought up in our pre-chat about Florida, against Florida with Renard Wilson and Peter Boulware. But even then, I mean, total domination of an offense that was very competent, that scores points. That's a top 20 offense in the country that has a lot of good metrics, and they looked incompetent. I mean, we didn't beat Southern Miss that bad, right? I mean, I don't know that we've ever beat anybody that bad on defense. I mean, that was incredible. I mean, the defensive line was incredible. The secondary was all over them. The linebackers were flying around. I mean, answering the call snap after snap was incredible. I mean, I don't really have words for it. It was such a thorough deal, and on the offensive side of the ball, you could see that Mike was just trying to manage the game, not lose the game. Don't let Brock lose the game. He tried to open up a little bit at certain points, and you saw why he was managing it the way he was managing it, right? He threw some balls that maybe should have been picked or whatever. And Louisville just stacked the box and made it hard to run the ball. I mean, going to Wildcat was a great move, obviously. I mean, it sprung Lawrence and that was a play. I mean, I'm just this team, and I said it in my keys to the game. I said, I don't know how it's going to manifest itself, but I trust this team. This team finds the way to win. And, I don't know what form it was going to take, but it was going to happen. I was confident they were going to figure it out and find a way to win this game. And they dang sure did.
Fish, listen, it was you and I talked a little bit about before we got on the air. It's kind of funny. When we started this season, it was all about the offense. It was all about Florida State's offense. They were going to carry the team. There were more questions about the defense than there were the offense. And you and I both talked about it. It was one of the most impressive defensive performances by Florida State that we've seen in a long, long time. And they've really carried the water for Florida State for about the last 9 games. Ever since Clemson, they've been playing lights out. Adam Fuller said before the season that he thought they could be one of the best defenses in the country, and they've certainly, at least to end their last 9 games, played like one. And tonight, they might have been the best defense that played in the championship game.
Yeah, I mean, Jerry would be able to know more about this than I would, but when I go back to maybe the Kansas game where they got all the stops on the goal line, that was memorable. The Florida State game with, like I said, Peter Warwick and Renard Wilson. You go back to the game against maybe Ohio State in the bowl game where they basically punished the Ohio State quarterback. They dominated all 3 levels. We always come back and we do those recaps on Monday, or I do the Sunday morning recap, and you can find one fault. I'm not going to even bother breaking down the defense other than all 3 levels. I mean, Renardo Green had the best game he's ever had in a Florida State uniform.
Yeah.
I mean, Tatum, Bethune, and Deloche and Lundy, the linebackers were all over the place. And I've got to give I wasn't huge on the signing of Frisk. I thought he was maybe a rotational guy, but what he did tonight, I mean, like he made a lot of money for himself tonight because he dominated. He showed the ability to redirect and chase guys down from behind. I don't know what he it took before that game, but I want some of it because he was unreal and unblockable, and they were unreal on the defensive side of the ball. That's the best defense in the country tonight. And you know what? They did it. You go back to the LSU game, the second half of the LSU game, not to this level, but they flashed this year where they've been special. And tonight culminated into one of the top 5 performances, I believe, in FSU history.
Well, it's funny. You just mentioned Braden Fisk, and I just saw a tweet from Marvin Jones that said that he's told Braden Fisk that he deserves to wear 55, and he's represented that number well. But he might have had. Now, listen. There's a window of time where I did not see Florida State games when I was in football myself. This might have been the best game by a defensive tackle I have seen since Derek Alexander in the 1993 Orange Bowl, where he dominated Nebraska. Braden Fisk led the team in tackles tonight, led the team in tackles for a loss, and led the team in tied for quarterback hurries. Listen,
really?
We've noticed about this all year.
Like I said, Jerry could jump in and talk about it, because maybe I go back. So I love Florida State history with guys like Corey Simon and guys that have had those moments. But he dominated to a level, like I said, all these guys. This is going to go down as an all-time great performance of a Florida State defense. All three levels. They dominated at all three levels tonight, and it was just unreal. I mean, they got after the quarterback, and the linebackers all stayed in their gaps. They did what they needed to do. I don't really, when they go to grade this from a PFF grade, I'm going to be interested to see how they grade these guys out. I don't remember one guy really having a bad moment in this game. There was one play by Gilbert Edmond. He kind of got lost, but he hasn't played a whole lot this year. Other than that, I really can't remember one play where they didn't just whip the guy in front of him.
Now, Jerry, you might have got 10,000 steps in the night walking around with the game. What's going on? I think who was more nervous towards the end of the game, Jerry or Mike Norvell? As they were facing, Jerry was pacing the room, Norvell was pacing the sideline. But Jerry, to Fish's point, you've seen a tremendous amount of Florida State football over the course of your time at Florida State and the Osceola. Where does this rank to you in the games that you've seen, particularly in a game that had this much riding on it?
You go back to like maybe 1980, when Florida State beat Nebraska at Nebraska. Yep. We won it with field goals. This was an offense that there's two factors in my mind. One, that Nebraska game was where the defense had to win it, the defense and the punter, right, in 1980. Our offense was not dynamic. And so the pressure was on the defense to win that game in 80, right?
Yep.
But that wasn't a championship game.
Right.
That's what makes this one in the argument of the best defensive performance ever, because of what was at stake. And that those defensive players, every time they were on the sidelines, they knew they had to go out and get a stop. Yep. And that to me, Mark, that and Fish, that elevates it into the greatest ever.
I mean, I always thought the best defense, one of the best defense we had was that 92 defense when Marvin was a junior. Derek Brooks was like a freshman, maybe a sophomore. We had Dan Footman, Sterling Palmer, Carl Simpson, Corey Fuller, Terrell Buckley. I mean, that was a great defense, and they had a performance against Florida that was one for the ages. We had in several that year. And then that you mentioned that 93, game against Kansas when we had 13 plays inside the 10. I think of those performances. But, Jerry said it, the stakes in this game were so high in the situation, knowing you had a true freshman third-team quarterback as your quarterback, knowing that you had no margin for error, none. And, I mean, to perform series after series, quarter after quarter, I started getting a little worried late. I'm like, they're going to get tired at some point. But you know what? That rotation that we have going in, those guys stayed fresh. You saw DJ Lundy in there making plays. It was really incredible. And look, they're not a bad offense. That's the thing. They were a top 20 offense. And they had the ACC blocker of the year was on that line. And that guy was, and they just ran through him like nothing.
Yeah, his first sack was in the A gap.
Yep.
Right by him.
Yeah, I don't think he won the MVP, but he should have. But Mark, to your point, not only was Louisville good on offense coming into this game, Jeff Brom is regarded as one of the best offensive tacticians in college football. And Adam Fuller and that defensive staff shut him down.
Totally shut him. They had no answers. Those receivers couldn't shake loose. I thought he'd scheme some kind of running game, and he never was able to. It was really, like I said, I don't have the words to really express how impressive that performance was. I'm blown away by how dominant they were.
No, he did have to Jeff Brom's credit, he had a good third quarter. The adjustments they made when they came out in the first of the second half.
Yeah.
They had three drives there where he was running some screens and some throws behind the line of scrimmage. And I think they put up 100 yards on us in the third quarter, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Jerry, one of the big plays came when I said like Gilbert Edmond was in, they ran a screen on his side and he got washed inside and he didn't press outside at all. So that was a big play. It was more of the backups. The starters were unbelievable. Listen, in this day and era and time where the offenses have all the advantages. I mean, basically, anytime you touch a guy now, it's a pass interference. For a performance like this, it is truly remarkable. Like I said, I'm blown away with the way they played on defense because now you just in this era of college football, you just want to get one drive, you get a stop here or there, but to dominate from beginning to end, and they never let up throughout the game. They dominated from start to finish. It just, I'm speechless. I'm being honest. I'm speechless.
Yeah, you look at the drive chart; it's remarkable. They only had 5 3-and-outs. That's the only. So basically, a third of their drives were 3-and-outs. One drive over 6 plays in the entire game. One drive over 24 yards or 43 yards for the entire game. Their longest drive was 13 to 56 for 56, 620 in time of possession. After that, really nothing outside the 8-play 43-yard drive that led to a field goal. And then Florida State, just like it did against Florida last week, the last 4 drives, Louisville gets nothing. 12 plays for minus 12 yards. Same recipe as last week. They got after the quarterback, started heating him up, and just finished this game off for Florida State. I mean, we all thought
inverse sack the quarterback with the tackle again, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Last week.
FSU had 10 punts and 1 drive that finished on downs. Their offense couldn't sustain drives, and their defense stayed fresh. I mean, it's just.
Well, I said this kiddingly during the game. I was glad to see FSU offense try to get Mastromanno the Ray Guy Award. And he
definitely punted a lot tonight.
That's a whole nother. I will say this. When they went down and kicked that field goal to tie it, right, and then the response during that series, to find the Wildcat and break a play with LT and get the ball in the end zone as a response. I mean, Mike says that he's been saying it since day one. It's all about your response, to respond in that moment. And then the second response on the blocked punt, right? They are in prime position. And Jerry brings up a great point that Alex not trying to kick that ball and get it blocked and return for a touchdown or something crazy like that. He just ate it, got the defense back on the field, and then to come up with the turnover was what an incredible response. And like I said, you knew this team was going to make it happen somehow. You just knew it because of the character of this team somehow. And during the course of the game, and dang if they don't do it time in and time out. And, why they have the SEC network crew announcing the ACC championship game, I have no idea. But they just kept talking about, throwing up all the scenarios about who should be in the playoff. And I'm sitting there thinking, nobody's talking about the will to win and the response that this team consistently shows. I'm glad Mike said it in his interview right after the game. He mentioned that, they asked him why, should this team be in the playoff? He said they love each other, they have heart, and they respond. And he's also said other teams are really good, but they also have a loss. This team has answered every situation that's been thrown in front of them every time. And that, to me, should count above all else, honestly.
So I got in the column I'm going to do tomorrow, what the reason Florida State is where they are. They lead the nation in fewest turnovers with 5.
Yeah.
And say what you want about Glenn. Yep. He did not turn the ball over. And so we had no turnovers in this game. We finished the 13th game with 5 turnovers on the year.
That's incredible.
The next best team in Florida State history had 14 turnovers.
When's the last time we had a running back fumble? I I can't remember running back fumble.
Yeah,
That
Benson.
was last year's
Benson,
team.
yeah, Benson and Toa Philly are very good at making sure they don't fumble the ball.
So, yeah, and Brock got under pressure tonight, and he tried to throw a couple picks, but
Yeah.
And he held the ball. I mean, look, what a situation to be in your first start with all that's at stake, a playoff, a championship. I mean, everybody's like, I'm reading some of the stuff on social media and stuff, and everybody's like, you got to trust the kid. Let him throw it down the field. I'm like, football is not easy, people. It is not easy. In this situation, it's a championship game. I mean, they're pretty good.
Against a very good defense, and the speed of that game is definitely. We talked about last week with Tate. It's much different than what he sees in practice. He has probably not. I mean, he went live for about 8 plays against North Alabama and only played in one other game before that, prior to his couple of snaps at Florida. Just the speed of the game, you could not expect a true freshman to basically ride. You couldn't ride his arm for this game. It was about the other 10. It was always going to be about the other 10 guys on offense to me, and it was always going to be about the defense.
And listen, the kid didn't get any help. There were 4 drops that would have extended plays to first downs. And I'm not here to defend Glenn. I'm just saying we won the game. And he didn't do anything to beat you.
Jerry, I think this just shows you and the fans in general why freshmen really should not play. And it's you got to be really, really special. Most of these guys used to sit for 2 years at Florida State, and then once it was their turn, they played sparingly as in backups and blowouts. This kid hasn't played, and to throw him out there, it'd be like telling a race car driver, hey, your first race is an Indy 500 that you've ever raced, and throw them out there and expect them to win. It's a lot to ask. I didn't expect much out of him. I thought that Norvell would give him, roll him out, get him some easy passes to the tight ends and stuff, where he would pick up some, plays where they could keep the chains moving and stuff. I didn't think he'd play to this level, but it's a lot to ask of a freshman to go into his first game ever in this situation and this pressure. And he has a lot to, all the players on the team, the pressure of keeping an undefeated season and winning an ACC championship. I think it's overwhelming. I think most kids would fail in that situation. So kudos to him that he didn't.
Yeah, Mark, I got a question for you. I don't know if you remember this, but one of our last years at South Carolina, I think we got down to our 3rd quarterback. I want to say it was Fishbein against South Carolina. Obviously did not go well for us. But I say all that, you've been in that situation before as an offensive line coach on an SEC team. Talk about the job Mike Norvell did and basically not let it. He lost obviously, I think what we know now is just how good Jordan Travis was. I think we talked about Keon and Johnny and Trey a lot during the course of this year, but I think what we learned the last 2 weeks that 13 was what made this offense go, regardless of the success other guys were having on the field. But talk about the job Mike did in managing the situation over the last 2 weeks. Again, a tremendous amount of pressure on him with what they had going on in this game, but the college football playoff and the ACC chance to win an ACC title. But just talk about the challenge the staff has had over the last couple of weeks and the job he has done.
You got to give Mike a lot of credit as an offensive coach to know the big picture, to manage his team overall, right? And to use your favorite phrase, Pat, complimentary football.
I knew you were coming with it. As an offensive coach, you want to generate offense. You want to show what you got, and regardless of who's in the game. But to have the discipline he had to manage the game offensively the way he did with Brock shows to me. He had a plan. He stuck to it. Didn't put the kid in a lot of compromising situations. Took a couple shots. Got him in some dropback situations, and he really didn't handle it well. He's waiting for guys to break open. There were a couple throws there when he was dropping back. If he anticipated the throw a little bit and put it in a good spot, it could have been there. But he was waiting for things to break open, and he's holding the ball way too long. The protection wasn't that bad. It really wasn't, But waiting too long to cut it loose. So he kind of knew what he had there, and he had the patience and discipline to try to find other ways to generate points
And he did. You rely on your defense, your punter, your field position. Hopefully one pops, and one did with the Wildcat with Toafili. And I mean, that takes a lot of. You got to give him a lot of credit for understanding the situation, understanding his team, being able to rely on his defense and his kicking game. Fitzy making 3 field goals. Missed one, but it was close. I mean, it was. That's not easy, especially for an offensive coach who prides himself on being an offensive guy who generates a lot of offense, right? You got to give him a lot of credit.
ACC Coach of the Year and a nominee for National Coach of the Year. I don't think many coaches faced the challenge that Mike did. One of my good friends was here with us at Glory Days tonight. She made the statement that how many of those teams that are competing to be in this playoff have had to do it with their third string quarterback?
100%. And the injuries. I mean, it was obvious Keon was nursing something. Every time he hit the ground, he looks like he's got ribs or something. I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but every time he hit the ground, he kind of hold his elbow tight to his chest and whatever. So, he wasn't 100%. Jaheim Bell didn't play a whole lot, that I saw. I mean, he ran some motions and stuff, but he wasn't really a big part of the offense. I mean, we obviously had more than one hand tied behind our back offensively. And, when the defense smells blood like that, I mean, they had guys flying from all over the field, and I mean, and that happens fast. So you're a true freshman kid back there, and you're seeing all this stuff just flying, flashing in front of you, man. That's tough. It really is. Football's not easy.
Let me point out a very obvious thing. Brock comes in here. He's really a true freshman, went through spring. But he's been in a green jersey this year.
Yeah.
I mean, now you're playing in a game where they're loading live rounds in the chamber, and so the speed of the game for a freshman's rough. Yeah. But when you've been in a green jersey all year, it's got to be even faster.
Oh yeah, and listen, you haven't been hit in a while. I mean, when's the last time they hit a quarterback in practice at Florida State? The scrimmage before the last. The last scrimmage of the year, right?
And remember this too. Brock had an hand injury. I think it was his thumb, and he was out.
That's true. He didn't practice for what, 7 weeks?
Yeah,
I think 7. I know it was more. It was 5 or more. And so when you think about all the things that compound on what that kid, he managed the game.
Yes.
I mean, that's a fair statement.
Yeah. I mean, he does no turnovers. Played smart, didn't take any chances. I think, pretty much what Mike – I mean, I think he made a couple of misreads. You saw some conversations on the sideline with he and Mike, and I thought Mike handled him – based on what we saw on the television copy, I thought Mike handled him very well. We'll talk to Kurt tomorrow, see if he saw anything different. But it seemed like Mike was very patient, knew exactly what he was getting into, how he needed to handle Brock. Mark, let me ask you this.
He didn't have a choice. I mean, he had to have kid gloves on him because, honestly, in a situation like today, you don't really want to mentally take a kid out of a game because there's no glass to break. I mean, there's A.J. Duffy and English a walk on. He had to keep him mentally in the game and be like, hey, you're doing a good job.
Mark,
just don't turn it up.
What was the difference when they went to the Wildcat with Toafili and did it a couple times with Benson? Why did it seem like they were having an easier time running the ball in that formation than out of the regular shotgun set offset back?
Well, what it gives you is it helps you account for that extra gap and the extra defender, right? So they're always trying to outnumber you with people in there, and so unless you're willing to run the quarterback, which that one time Brock ran the first time, he put his head down, didn't slide. If you look at the TV copy, it looked like he almost hyperextended his knee, and you saw him kind of limp around a little bit, And so after that, he started to slide, right? So, you're putting your quarterback at risk if he's a threat for the running game. But that's the only way you can control that extra guy by getting the Wildcat out there. It doesn't matter who you split out wide, whether it's a quarterback or it's the kicker. They're going to put somebody out over him. It doesn't matter. They're always going to put somebody out over him. So that having your running back as the guy taking the snap helps you account for that extra defender. And so now the numbers come back even. And if the numbers are even, you've got a better chance. And that's exactly what happened. We were able to use that running back as the lead blocker, as opposed to that not having a lead blocker and having to run a zone or a counter, pull somebody across the formation to block that extra guy to that side. Now you don't have to do that. You got the runner already taking the snap, and you got a lead blocker with the running back, and so it accounts for that. That's why people do it. That was always the theory behind it.
Why do you think they found success in the second half? They started running. Well, it didn't matter what was zone or counter. They found success, particularly in the fourth quarter. You saw Benson have a couple of nice runs. You think it was just a matter of just wearing Louisville's defense down?
Yeah, I think maybe they got a feel for it. I'd have to look at it a little closer. The first couple of times you had some guys crossing our face over the top, and I'd have to look at it again how they were playing it. But I think we ran it into better looks too. But it might have been just a case of, I know that they call a run and they'll pick a different side. They could be run to the right, run to the left, and quarterback says we're going to run it to the right or run it to the left. So they just call the run. It may be a case where maybe Brock wasn't seeing it and he maybe called it in some better looks. Maybe we formationed it a little better. I'd have to look at it a little closer to see, in order to get it more of a numbers advantage or hit it to a shorter side or whatever. But obviously they hit on something and it was a lot more effective.
All right. Now I got a question for both of you, because we've got some comments about the quarterback play. And I think we all thought that it was probably, listen, I don't know what we thought the high end of this was going to be, but let's talk about what you do with obviously Tate will be healthy by the time they play again, whether it's the college football playoff, which we'll find out tomorrow. Or
the Orange Bowl.
Or the Orange Bowl. How do you move forward? How do you think Mike moves forward with the quarterback situation? You think he goes back to, I think Tate can. I think Brock can still retain his. I think this was his fourth game he's played in. But you've obviously got to get him ready to be the second team guy, even if your plan is to try to save that red shirt. But how do you think Mike moves forward with the quarterback situation? I'll ask both of you that question.
Go ahead, Fish.
I think they changed the rule for the bowl games where it's like for the following year.
You're right.
So that's I don't think it affects because with so many kids opting out now, I think they made a rule that guys can play and it doesn't affect their eligibility. So
you're absolutely right. My bad.
All right. Well, I helped you out there.
I have a question for Fish. Fish, when I was doing my little mock-up on pregame on Louisville, I like to count how many 4- and 5-star kids that the teams we play. And we play with 11 4- and 5-star players. Mm-hmm. Miami had 22, I think, and Florida had 25. This Louisville team had 15. Yeah. And as I looked at where those kids come from, they're all, a lot of them are Southern kids.
Yeah, they do. They recruit heavily in Louisiana, Georgia, Florida, and I don't blame them. That's where they've had their success. I mean, you look, Lamar Jackson came from Florida. They don't really have a lot of kids in Kentucky for them to recruit. There's just not a lot of players in that state, so they have to go outside the state, and they take a lot of kids that are undersized linebackers and try to make them DNs. They go old school like Florida State, Miami used to take corners and move them to safeties to corners, because they're not going to get the athletes that a Florida State, Miami, and Florida are. And they do a very good job of evaluating kids. You'll see a lot of the kids that they get outperform. Like they had this kid out of Boca Raton High School, the Gillette kid. He's like one of the leaders in sacks. He was a good player in high school, but he had the measurables, but they took a chance on him, and they have to hit on. And there's a smaller room for error on those kids, but they got to hit on those kids for them to compete at this level.
Well, as I look at that, when you're recruiting a bunch of Southern kids, they're going to match you with speed.
Yeah.
And tonight, Florida State a hard time getting the edge.
Yeah.
Louisville got a lot of hats to the ball, to give them credit.
Yeah.
And but
I mean, you look at the one kid, Joey Gatewood. He was a 4-star quarterback out of Jacksonville that signed with Auburn, and then I think he went to UCF, and they converted him to tight end.
He went to Kentucky, then UCF, then Louisville.
Yeah, so I mean, he has a shot of playing in the league because he's. But I'm just saying, he was a highly rated kid coming out of high school, and he was a quarterback. I remember people were wondering why Florida State didn't recruit him. He had a great arm, but he wasn't accurate. He was a great athlete. He was a big kid that could run. So Louisville's turn this kid into an NFL prospect.
And they had 26 of their top 50 players are transfers.
That's how that program's going to be. They're kind of, that's how they're going to make their success. Like I said, there's not a lot of kids that they're going to recruit in the state of Kentucky. So they've got to actually go out and recruit the portal, and they got to recruit JUCO kids, and they got to recruit castaways from other programs. So for Louisville to have success, that's how they've always done it.
Listen, they did have a number of portal kids that came in this year. I think they had about 16 and 18. So he did, that was one of the reasons he was able to rebuild. I think that's just the way the sport's going. We're going to see it starting in about 36 hours. The portal's going to be going crazy. All right, so I do have some breaking news. Toa Feely was named the ACC championship game MVP. And maybe even more importantly, Braden Fisk was asked to break the rock, which probably shows you who the team thought the MVP was coming out of this game. But both of them, significant difference makers on both sides of the ball. But,
Look,
I think Jerry said he has a whole newfound respect for Toa Feely after watching him because he was running hard.
I think he's the most underappreciated.
Go ahead.
Listen, I think he's the most underappreciated player on the team. Here's a kid that has seen kids come in and transfer since the moment he got, since Norvell's got there. You never hear him complain. He always seems to find a way to make big plays in these games. I really respect the kid. He's a kid that could have easily gone somewhere else and started or got a lot more playing time than he has at Florida State. And I've never heard any of the media guys say that this kid complains in the locker room or is unhappy being at Florida State.
By the way, I have an old linebacker coach calling me to rub it in because he told me that he thought FSU's defense would carry them to an ACC championship, and I wasn't sure with all the optics that were going on with the game. But he's calling to rub it in right now, but I'm not going to take it.
Well,
I'll take it when I drive to the house. So, all right, so guys, let's talk about the elephant in the room. All right, so you can make a case that Florida State's team is so good comprehensively to win with the second team quarterback in Gainesville, your third team quarterback in the ACC championship game, that they're actually a better team than we thought they were. It's just not Jordan Travis. How do you guys, Alabama beat Georgia, Washington won last night, Texas won big today, Michigan didn't look great against Iowa. I mean, based off what little I was able to see out of the corner of my eye. How do you guys think? I mean, we'll find out tomorrow. We're going to do our live show around 11:30, 11:45 in the morning. Hopefully both of you guys can join us. But how do you think this plays with the committee and the people that are going to try to shape the narrative over the next 12 hours?
Yeah, I have a couple of thoughts. So number one, everybody and their mother said that Oregon was going to beat Washington because they've looked better leading up to this game, right? They play the game and Washington wins. Everybody and their mother thought that Georgia, was going to, well, not everybody, but a lot of people picked Georgia to win, probably 50-50, I would say, maybe, right? Yeah. And it just goes to show you that even the experts, I mean, people that do this for a living pick games, and they're 50-50 at best. So to sit there and say that this team is better than that one would beat that one, you don't know until you play the game. That's number one, right? And so number two, I watched that game last night. I watched especially the fourth quarter, and I didn't see a whole lot of tackling. I didn't see a whole lot of defense. Everybody's enamored with the offense and the quarterbacks and this and that and this and that. Look, that quarterback that we played tonight wasn't, an NFL guy, but he was a pretty effective quarterback for their offense. And they were, like I said, they were top 20 offense, and they were totally shut down. So that's got to count.
Completion percentage for them, 30. I think that's 16 of 36, 18 of 30, 12 of 36, something like that.
That's got to count for something, And again, if you break the precedent of not picking a top undefeated Power 5 conference champion, you're going to break a huge precedent, and they may not care because it's the last year for a 14 playoff, but you're breaking a huge precedent. And I said this last week. I said that I have a hard time thinking that Boo Corrigan is going to go on the air if Florida State does not make the playoff and get asked the question, why didn't Florida State make it? And he has to sit there and say, because we devalued the ACC schedule, right? Because that's essentially what you're doing. If you say that the ACC is not good enough to win their championship and go undefeated in the league, and oh, by the way, go 2-0 against the SEC, that, you know, that's not, they're not good enough, you know, and because that's essentially what you're saying. I have a hard time thinking that they're going to roll him out there and he's going to have to defend that.
Jerry,
You know,
what do you think?
Well, I agree. I would agree with Mark. And you know, for our listeners' edification, if you don't know, Boo Corrigan, who's the chairman of the College Football Playoff, is the athletic director at an ACC school, NC State. His father was the commissioner of the Atlantic Coast Conference. So that's a particularly large pill for him to swallow.
Yeah. Fish, what do you think?
Listen, I believe Florida State deserves to be in. I've said all along, I think they're one of the top 4 teams. I just think they're a very talented team. If you put them on the field with any team, Benson may be the best running back on either team. Keon Coleman, when he's at the top, could be one of the best receivers. They have one of the best tight ends. They're very good. It's part of the reason why I've argued with Jerry a little bit about Washington. Washington's a lot better than people have thought all year because they have NFL guys where it matters most. They have 2 NFL tackles. You got to look at the talent, and I think a lot of people look at the results of these games, and they look at, oh, Georgia and Alabama are playing. But if you watch Georgia and Alabama today, those aren't the same Alabama and Georgia teams we've seen the last 5 years. I don't think they're nowhere near as good as those teams, and I felt like FSU had a good shot. I haven't been on the Ohio State bandwagon because I don't think their quarterback's any better than Tate Rodemaker at the end of the day. I think Florida State should be in. I believe Texas should be in at the end of the day because they beat Alabama. You could tell me how great the SEC is. I think these other conferences have been better than them this year, and we'll see what happens. Florida State, listen, they've done what you've asked them to do. They've won every game. It's so hard to go undefeated in college football. I just think it'd be a travesty if you sit there and say, oh, you can't be in because of some narrative you want to make. Oh, well, there's third-string quarterbacks playing. Well, they still won, even with all those problems they supposedly have.
Hey, Fish, let me add to what you're saying there by saying this. You talked about offense.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, you know, the eye test goes to the offensive side of the ball. Who is going to look this Florida State defense in the face and say, you're not good enough to be in the playoff?
Yeah,
nobody.
I mean, after tonight, you got to argue that they're the best defense in the country or one of the top 2 or 3. I mean, that's going to be in the discussion. I mean, Michigan's got a great defense, but I don't think.
What was the final score of the Michigan game, by the way?
26-0.
But honestly,
I don't think Michigan has. They don't have a Hutchinson like they had before. They're very good. They're very sound. But FSU has difference makers with Verse and with Patrick Payton and these guys and Fisk and these guys coming off the edge. They're a different team than all these other teams. They've got good defenses, but these guys have difference makers. And when you have difference makers where it matters most, you're a dangerous team. You don't want to play Florida State because they have the ability on offense. It doesn't, even with Brock, they're going to get better with him as a quarterback. But when you have Keon Coleman, he's one play away, whether it's special teams. Other teams don't have that ability other than maybe Washington. You see Michigan. Michigan's very methodical. They don't have a big play threat. And that's why Florida State would have a chance to beat them, because big plays become demoralizing in a game when a game's close. You saw tonight, FSU made the one big play, and then all of a sudden the momentum started to flow on their side. I think this team's very undervalued for whatever reason. These experts and everybody have this they play the result, and I don't think half these people really watch every game. I just don't. That's why I've said all along, everybody said how great Ohio State is. I keep going back to them. I've watched them all year. I've not been impressed. If you take Marvin Harrison off that team, they have 3 losses this year.
Well, they don't show on the score, when they're doing the evaluation, they count top 25 teams, and they showed Clemson and
LSU.
Clemson and LSU. LSU gets, Florida State, they scored 28 against us, and 7 was when we put in all the freshmen.
Yeah, late in the game where, the game was over.
They dominated them the whole second half.
They dominated. And this defense is better today than it was the day that they played LSU.
Oh, it's not even close. Secondary play is so much better than it has been.
Yeah.
I mean, that kid today came into this game completing 66% of his passes. Now, he was turnover prone, 11 interceptions, but his adjusted completion rate was 78% after drops, guys. Jeff Brom knows how to coach quarterbacks, and Adam Fuller's defense made him look like Fish, I think you might have told me in a text, you couldn't tell the difference between Brock Glenn and their quarterback. I mean, he looked uncomfortable all day. He did not look like a guy that had played 38 games.
Listen, all you could ask, they dominated a top 15 team that a week ago was in the top 10.
Yes.
Miami, I think they scored on Miami's defense, who I think Miami has a very good defense this year. They scored either 28 or 35 or whatever. I mean, they put up points. I mean, Florida State, I don't know how many points Louisville had at halftime. It may have been 0, or it was like, 3-0, 3-3. They dominated them. If you're the committee, you sit there and you say, all right, are they a dominant offense? Yeah, they're not a dominant offense, but they are so good defensively that they could play with anybody in the country. I mean, they don't have a lot of room for error, but you know what? What's to say they don't get a pick six early in the game against one of these teams, and then their defense and their run game get going, that they could win these games? You know, I mean, I think I will
say this.
Well, plus they got 15 practices to get whoever the quarterback is ready.
I mean, you know, optically, the one place where we kind of fall short is probably up front on offense, right?
Yep.
When I watch these other teams. I watch Alabama and Georgia, even Washington. I mean, we run the ball in chunks, you know, but we don't generally methodically run the ball, you know, back to back to back to back and generate first downs like that. We got home run hitters. And that's how we do it. So it doesn't exactly look the same in terms of that. So, I mean, optically, it doesn't look as good. And look, it is a weakness of ours. You know, we're not as physical as some of those other teams up front on offense. Now, we are on defense, but not on offense. I mean, I think I'm just being honest.
Well, Mark, don't you agree, though, every team this year, there's no 2013 Florida State. There's not like the LSU team.
That was going to be my point. Every team has a weakness. Every team has flaws.
Yeah.
Every team has flaws. And so that, you know, that's our flaw. And now you throw the quarterback in there a little bit. So, you know, I understand. But look, you can't account for the heart of a champion. I mean, as corny as that sounds, that's what you're dealing with here. You know, these guys have found a way every game, no matter what's been thrown in front of them, to pull it out, to win, to do whatever it takes, whether it's a special team play, whether it's a big defensive play, whether it's a big run. You know, I mean, I was just sitting there waiting for Benson, and turned out to be Toafili, to break a big run. You know, and Trey was you know, a couple away from breaking one too. I mean, he was close on a couple. You know, and so, you know, but that's how we win games. You know, and it's you can't just discount that.
No, you can't. Listen, it was a hell of a night, guys. We've got a hell of a day to go tomorrow. Mark, I think you're going to be busy with Fish. You going to be able to join us at 11:30 tomorrow?
I'll see if what I've got going, but I'll try to get on at 11.
All right. Well, listen, we appreciate everybody watching tonight. It was a huge night for Florida State as they moved to 13-0, win their first ACC championship since 2014, Jerry.
Yeah,
2014. On the premises of being in the college football playoff. We'll learn more about that tomorrow. The committee's got some really hard decisions to make. I'm glad I'm not one of them, but Florida State certainly took care of their business tonight and beating Louisville and putting themselves in a position to move on to one of the top 4 spots in college football tomorrow. We'll find out what happens, but certainly appreciate you guys joining us. And it's a hell of a night for Florida State as they move to 13-0. And we appreciate everybody staying with us late tonight. We know it's about 1 o'clock in the morning. I think they're about to kick us out of here. But we will be back tomorrow, 11:30-ish, 11:45-ish. We will post it on YouTube. If you don't subscribe to our YouTube channel, please hit the subscribe button before you log off tonight. Set up notifications, but we will be back with college football playoff committee reaction after starting at 11:30. We'll move in talk a little bit more about this game as we get a chance to rewatch it early in the morning. And obviously talk about what we think Florida State's chances are of reaching the college football playoff. And then, of course, listen to what the committee says. But, Jerry, hell of a night.
Big night.
Mark, you want to sign us off as usual?
Go Noles, ACC champions, baby. Love it.
I want to thank Glory Days for hosting this game watching party we had here tonight. We'll do more in the future, so be looking out for that.
Thanks for joining us. Have a great night. Enjoy the win.